morning. I'm Dr. Monique Guishard. These are two of my brilliant students, Webster, Ballard, and Christin. I just want to marinate on this slide for a little bit. So I'm a social psychologist by training. I'm a participatory action researcher, and I can say a little bit about what that means. And I'm also an ethicist. I make mention of being a participatory action researcher because that is a non-mainstream approach to research that basically says that knowledge is most powerful when it's collaboratively conceived. So rather than initiate this project, do this project by myself, I invited two of my very tech-savvy students to be my research partners. And I mean research partners in a serious way. They'll talk about this focus group project, and it's what we're going to talk about today is very preliminary analysis. We conceived of the protocol. They transcribed the text of the focus group. They are leading the analysis of it. Okay, cool. You guys don't have to stand next to me if you don't want to. Cool. So like I said, I'm a social psychologist. I am one of two on the faculty. For a long time, I was the only one. I'm a weird kind of professor in that I am an entirely CUNY educated scholar. So I'm a graduate of BCC, of Lehman, of Hunter, of the CUNY Graduate Center. And man, I remember being on a lot of classes where I was staring at the roof more than I was staring at the screen and at my professor. So it's really important to me that my class is dynamic and engaging and exciting and turns students on to thinking about a career in psychology. Really briefly, this is actually a page from my syllabus. My students know I love GIFs and memes like you don't even know. So SP is a scientific study, really quickly, of social influence, how our thoughts, feelings, and actions are influenced by the real or imagined presence of others, but also how we, in turn, impact other folks' thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's an intermediate level psychology class. It's an individual and society class. It's 3 credits at BCC and 4 credits at Lehman, which is a little bit frustrating because the folks that teach here at Lehman and I went to the same doctoral program and use the same book. And the presumption is that students in a community college don't have that lab component and they're not doing research. But my students actually do a collaborative survey project. And we don't quite use SPSS yet. That's because it's not on any of the computers. If it were, I would use it. But yeah, it's a little bit frustrating that when they come here, they actually don't get credit for this class in the way that you would think. I totally need a clicker. Cool. So briefly on some student learning objectives of this class. So I imagine, right, the fantasy is that students leave my class knowing that social psychology is a science, just because for a lot of folks, it's the science of common sense, right? So that they know that it's a science, that they have mastery of concepts and social psychological theorists, that they can write and express their refined thinking about SP in speech and writing, and definitely that they can talk about how race, ethnicity, culture, ability, sexuality, gender all affect social influence. I promise I'm not talking more than they. Okay, cool. So in this class, this is not a hybrid section. I have been trained in teaching with technology. I've done all of the trainings that BCC has. So it's a writing intensive section, but there's a lot of blended content in it. We use Blackboard, mostly in the traditional way. It's a repository for a lot of the materials, like the PowerPoints, and students upload stuff. We use an e-text, right? And this semester, the e-text decision was driven largely by price. Social psychology textbooks are like $245 minimum. This e-text is $75, and for $5 more, they actually get a print-bound version of the book sent to them. I don't want to talk a lot about Pearson. I don't. Is anyone from Pearson in the room? Okay, cool. It's an awesome company. It is. It is an awesome company. I've been approached by Pearson several times to do feasibility studies, because I also teach introductory psychology and social psych, and we're using two of their books. So REVEL, really briefly, is an immersive learning platform. It's a smart book. It's an audible book. So students log on, there's a narrator that reads the text to them. Every image that's in the traditional book is actually a playable video or a configurable diagram that they can mess with or whatever. It allows me as a professor to monitor all the time how students, how long they log on, how long they're reading, the kind of quizzes that they complete. It's pretty rad. It has its issues, though, which Christin and Webster will talk about. So my students are using REVEL, but we also, because I'm a critical social psychologist, are reading outside texts, like some excerpts from indigenous methodologies and other sources. So this is the fantasy of why I chose REVEL, right? And fantasy, for real, you'll see what I mean. I promise he's not on Instagram. He's actually talking about the book. So it's a fantasy because, like, it would be amazing if our students woke up in the morning and the first thing that they did was log on to the book. I know that is not true, right, Wendell? Yes. That is not true. In addition to REVEL, I use Prezi as a platform for teaching and enhanced PowerPoints. A little bit frustrating because I have the 2016 version, and sometimes all the work that I put into having a very enhanced PowerPoint doesn't quite go that way because we don't have that version at BCC. And then students, as part of the requirements for the course, complete a digital teaching project. So they have to pick a social psychological concept, and they have to take it over. And they have to use either PowerPoint or Prezi to teach the class for 7 minutes. And Christin and Webster will talk a little bit about that. Okay, so the frustration for me as an instructor is this all overkill, right? Is the Safe Assign and the Blackboard and the REVEL and the YouTube enhanced PowerPoints too much? Right, that's the struggle for me. Emma, I'm so grateful and appreciative to our the previous presenters because they saved me from talking a lot about the literature, which I can talk about, right? Cool. So you don't really want to hear from me. That's not why you came to this presentation. You want to hear from Webster and Christin, so they'll talk about the focus group project that we did.
Okay, so Webster and I wanted to obtain a better understanding of our peers' opinions on traditional versus blended learning, so we decided to hold a focus group discussion. And in our focus group discussion, we came up with many questions, and the inspiration for our questions was our personal experiences. So for example, I actually had difficulty signing up to REVEL, so I was curious to know if our peers also had difficulty using REVEL. We also thought that it would be good to take our own college experience. What do college kids want in education? So we asked them questions like, do you believe that you are learning more with REVEL, or did you feel that you were learning more with traditional talk and chalk learning? When we administered our survey first, we kind of kicked Dr. Guishard out the classroom.
That's all right.
It was just Webster and I facilitating the discussion. We also made sure that we let our peers know that what our research was exactly about and why we wanted to hear their opinions, and most importantly, what we would do with their responses, is we're actually presenting them to you here today. We made sure that they knew that in our discussion, we would make sure that we made sure that in the discussion that all of their responses would be heard, and that they would be anonymous, first and foremost. That if they wanted to be anonymous, that we would remove their names for the transcript. We let them know that if they wanted at any moment to leave the classroom, they could leave the classroom. If they wanted to refrain from answering questions, they could do that as well, because it was voluntary. They voluntarily participated in our discussion.
Cool.
It was actually a really great experience for us to actually learn how to actually conduct focus groups. We put everyone in the focus group, and then we had to also transcribe everything that they said so we could actually get a better understanding of how they felt, what they were thinking, and so we could actually use it later. Our focus group our transcription of the focus group actually took us about 6 hours each. I did the second half, Christin did the first half. It was about 1 hour and 5 minutes of just a group of people talking. We also had complete control over everything that happened in the focus group. We made up the questions, we chose the meeting time, we decided basically everything that happened in there. With the help of Dr. Guishard, it was more us than her doing everything with this focus group. We felt that the students actually needed a voice to actually voice their concerns, their problems, and how they felt about technology coming into the classroom rather than with the traditional ways of how we usually taught. We learned a lot, basically, from everyone who participated as well.
So, to give you a little bit of the demographic.
Can I say something, Christin? So the morning of the focus group, they come to me and they go, oh, so we had like this idea, right? We designed a survey that we'd like to administer in the group. And I'm like, what? Right? We're already working on the survey project. So Christin and Webster put together surveying some few demographic questions, but also some personality quirks, right, that you wanted to assess.
So in our demographic questions, we actually have 5 people participate in our focus group. 5 of the participants, 3 of them were Latinos and 2 of them were of African American descent. The age range was between 21 to 26 years old, and there were 3 females and 2 males.
We also wanted to know personality quirks about each person so we could better understand why they're answering the questions and in which form they're answering the questions. So we first wanted to know how patient were they, how impatient were they, do they have a short attention span, and how tech savvy they were. The patient question, we asked that to know how willing they are to actually continue doing something that is REVEL, PowerPoint, and Blackboard. The impatient, we want to know like how soon that they would probably quit from using this. We also asked about the short attention span because when using technology, we actually switch from one thing to another. So when I'm using REVEL or Blackboard, I switch to Facebook most of the time, or I switch to surfing. So that was more to see how long they actually use these programs while they're supposed to use it. We also asked about how tech savvy they were, because not a lot of people know how to use the technology, which we'll probably discuss later with the professors and the students. With the tech savvy person, a lot of them were actually very knowledgeable about how to use the technology and how to utilize it. We also wanted to ask where they actually use most of the technology that they use for class. Majority of them use their laptops because I believe that it is more mobile. A lot of them don't really use the e-reader, even though I think that would be a bit better for mobility, but they enjoy the laptop, I would say, most about all these ones. And I also wanted to ask where they use these technologies at. A majority of people use it either at home or at school. Most people think that work would probably be a bit too hectic to use it at, but at home they're better to relax and actually sit down and enjoy using the technology as well.
I forgot to say one thing about REVEL that also influenced my decision to use it as a text. It is available for every platform. So you can go from smartphone to laptop to desktop, theoretically.
Okay, so we asked a lot of questions during our discussion, but we chose 2 that we felt were really important. So we asked, have you found yourself expending extra effort or time, energy that you wouldn't have ordinarily used to use these programs? So one of the features that REVEL has is an audible, so someone can actually read the book to you as opposed to you reading it yourself. When Hell actually found this to actually be not that great, because many of the participants felt that he had a monotone voice and he would read at a very slow pace, and they found themselves having to use energy to actually stay awake to hear this man read. So, and Lily actually proposed that it might be a good idea if they were to have different people of different ethnicities to voice these characters to make it more engaging. When Hell again said that he believed that REVEL has wonderful experiments and wonderful examples. However, not all of them are that great. So he finds himself having to expend extra effort going online to find the answer to his questions that he wasn't able to find in the book. And we also have another participant, Waynell, who actually felt that if you are not good with time management skills, then REVEL is not the platform for you. With REVEL, what ends up happening is that you have a lot going on already in your college career with different classes, and it can be very, very easy to forget that you have a REVEL assignment due because there are due dates. Raymond actually proposed an idea that maybe REVEL should utilize a feature where they remind students a couple of days before their project is due to, say, hey, you have a project due, get to it.
Another question that we ask is, would you actually prefer the traditional methods of the chalkboard and just lecturing, or do you actually like the PowerPoints, the REVEL, and all this technology that we're integrating into the class? A lot of people said that they did not really like the old methods. They say that when they're using chalk, there's like a lot of understanding difficulties. With Raymond, it's more that the professors, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it.
He said that chalk is like deadly to the professors. I don't know where this idea comes from.
It's not, yeah. Like, I have asthma myself, so I'm actually glad they got rid of chalkboards, because when I was growing up, it was like, my chest was hurting in class sometimes. I also asked them, would they rather use the board rather than PowerPoint, and they also said no. And the reason for that was because a lot of professors don't have like legible handwriting. I remember times when I was in class looking at the board, I'm like, I can't see. I mean, I have glasses now, but it was still hard to understand their handwriting. With PowerPoint, it's more that you can read this clearly, I believe. Times New Roman is a really good font that just anyone can read.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Another part that I think that they also discussed about using it was that technology, using the lecture does have limitations. Is that if you don't really understand the teacher's accents, they're not able to really articulate it in a way in which you would understand.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some professors who I couldn't understand, and I'd just be sitting there. We had to ask the teacher to repeat and repeat it. And some professors don't really want to use Blackboard or PowerPoint. So that also limits people who are more tech savvy in the classroom than people who actually want to come to the class and learn.
Let me go next slide.
I would like to quickly add that we also posed the question, do you feel that you enjoy the quizzes on REVEL more than you did traditional quizzes that you would get in your class?
Mm-hmm.
And the class was very divided. Some people felt that when you have in-class quizzes, you actually have to retain the information and you have to study. So it's better for you to grasp and understand what you're learning. As opposed to REVEL, some felt that they weren't learning because REVEL offers you the option while you're taking a quiz to go back and to look for the answers, which isn't really that beneficial when it comes to you having to retain information.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that we also posed to them was, what would you want to say to your professors or anyone else who actually wants to utilize technology in the classroom? A lot of the times people feel that their teachers don't really know what they're doing with Blackboard or how to use these, new technologies, as they said to them. And it's frustrating when they try to post something online and then it's delayed because it's like, when did you post this? What is this as well? And the professor can't answer those questions. So what we came to the conclusion was that we believe that certain professors should get better training in technology. Because we are switching to a more modern era where this is actually the way to do presentations.
Before we ended our presentation, we actually just wanted to discuss with you our opinions since we were really sharing our peers. For one, I am for technology and I embrace REVEL. I feel that it is definitely a way cheaper alternative. I got a digital copy and a paper copy for the price of $80 as opposed to spending $245 for the textbook. So that's a big whoop for me. And I also feel that it's a great reinforcer for learning. At home, I read the whole chapter, retain the information, and then it's wonderful because I get to take quizzes. Then I go to my classroom where Dr. Guishard does a wonderful job of showing videos, examples, etc. So I feel that I'm getting double the learning. It's beneficial to me, so embrace technology.
I feel as though, as we're switching to more of a technological classroom, students will find different ways to bypass the system. I've actually known a few students who actually had the blackboard up and they said, oh, no, I'm just going to Google the answers. And this exam is worth 30%. And they're saying, oh, well, because they gave it to me this way, that's what they want me to do, which I believe doesn't teach students how to actually think in classroom. When you have the pop quiz, they have to actually retain the information, go to class, and then write down all the answers. Whereas with I would say on the fence with this though. If they had better ways to implement the technology and make it so that someone can't bypass the means which they're meant to be, it would be a wonderful thing. But until that point, I think we should probably use a bit more chalk and talk and a little bit of technology to actually make it more convenient for both people.
Thank you.
Questions?
How did you guys, I was going to say, enjoy being in charge of the question? Or maybe not.
I actually found it to be awesome. It was a lot of fun. First off, in our psychology class, we actually engage a lot with each other. So it was really nice to hear everybody's opinions. And we received some training from Dr. Guishard, so I felt that, we knew what we were doing when we went in there. And it was more of an intimate setting, because as opposed to having your teacher who people usually feel like is, a part of the hierarchy, like than you are, then I felt that it was very, very beneficial for all of us.
I felt that I actually learned a lot more when I was trying to get the feedback from other people, because I felt that only I'm having these problems, no one else is having these problems. Why should I address it? But when I found out that, X, Y, Z person is also having these problems, I'm like, so it's not just me, so I should probably be able to express it more. So I became more expressive knowing that it's not just a me problem, it's actually us problem.
Any more questions?
Yes?
So, let me get this straight. So you had a focus group of 5 students? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. And what you found is actually very interesting and very resourceful and very insightful, because Professor Dushenkov and I, who are going to speak next, we actually did an online survey, and we found essentially the same thing, and we got results from, I don't know, over 100 students, and we got essentially similar kinds of results from a number of the things that you found. And then also we've observed many of the same problems that you've observed. And particularly at this Ed Tech conference, where I should know because we have one of the members of Ed Tech, but they're all proselytizers for technology. No. And what was refreshing, what?
They said, no, I'm not.
What was refreshing that you pointed out some of the drawbacks of the technology. Well, in one case, that the professors themselves may need to go back to school, and also students are bypassing the pedagogical system. The teacher formulates it, okay, we'll do this and this, and you take online whatever, and then students are, well, in the old days we call it cheating, but as you properly pointed out, they're not learning. They're just taking a shortcut, and they're not learning the material. And so that's another important aspect. Anyway, but you also presented this REVEL technology, which is new to me. So thank you, all of you, for your input and presentations.
Thank you for your time.